In this video, I want to start off talking about Chapter 3, Sonata Form. Sonata form is one of the most commonly used forms, particularly in the classical period, is where it tended to develop, have its origins here, and you might want to read over pages 160 through 165 in your textbooks. It's also commonly known as Sonata Allegro form, is what a lot of musicians call this form. It occurs within one movement of a piece, not a whole sonata or not necessarily a whole symphony, but just within one movement there's this sonata form. It's mostly used within the first fast movement of most multi-movement classical compositions such as symphonies, string quartets, or piano sonatas. But it also has appearances also in final movements and sometimes even the middle movements there. What sonata form, it's in essence it's an ABA. It has three main section forms plus a shorter ending section which we call the coda in the sonata allegro form. The first main section in sonata form or sonata allegro form is the exposition. This is where the theme is presented in a tonic key such as like C major, and this bridge then modulates to a new polar key, something that sounds a little bit different, and this second theme is presented. So we have two different melodies or thematic materials that are opposing one another, and that's followed by a closing section in the same key as theme 2. The second main section in a sonata form is the development. All right, this is where the composer plays with themes in various new ways and modulates into different keys, maybe in a minor key if the tonic key was in major or vice versa, just to get a stark contrast. It's the development that you get some really strong contrast from what you hear earlier. And the final main section is the recapitulation. The recapitulation, or recap, is what we call it for short. And then we get the theme 1 repeated in the tonic key, bridge connecting the two themes again, and then the second theme is played in the tonic key this time, rather than the polar key. And the closing section also is in the tonic key. And sometimes in the sonata form there is a coda. Coda literally means tail, and it's this concluding material that kind of adds the little cherry on top to the whole sundae that this sonata form is. Now, what does this mean here? Well, what it does it's this particular formula of arranging the sonata form has some psychological or emotional effects on listeners here, where the exposition represents this sense of stability in the tonic key, and then this modulation or change of keys into the second key provides a sense of conflict or contrast, at least there. And then in the second development is where the heightened tension tends to build up. There's this sense of urgency in looking for that tonic key, and usually builds to a climax towards the end of the development. You can usually hear both dynamically and harmonically that you're at the climax of the piece during the development. And then in the recapitulation, you have that return of the theme 1 in the tonic key represents a return of stability, and that when the second theme or second main melody is played in the tonic key this time, that represents a resolution to the earlier conflict. Right? So it sounds like it almost has kind of a programmatic element, but still in this abstract form of instrumental music in the sonata form. And then the coda, of course, gives a sense of finality and conclusion with a strong cadence in the original key that the composer started on. Done so already, I recommend you going to the online learning center and go to part 4, chapter 3, and there's these web exercises which are not required for you to do in this particular chapter, but reading up a little bit more on the sonata form, but probably which is probably most beneficial to you to understanding the sonata form is the capstone activity here. This again is not required, but I do encourage you to click through this here and get familiar with this capstone activity, this sonata. This sonata activity comes from Mozart's Symphony Number 40 in G minor. All right. Again, you can click here to dismiss the screen here, and here you'll get the main melodies in the exposition. You get to experience them live, and you get to hear how all those themes represent to one another, and see how they relate to this sonata form. What is required out of you in this unit on the classical period is the capstone activity that goes with chapter 6 here in part 4. So go to part 4, chapter 6, and there's the section on the rondo. The rondo form. Rondo form is basically an A, B, A, C, A pattern, where it always keeps going back to the A pattern. So it's an extension of the ABA or ternary form that we discussed in the very first unit. There is a capstone activity that is required for you to submit something to me, and you just click on Rondo here, and it loads up Beethoven's String Quartet in C minor. There's actually a listening guide that goes with this on page 171 in your textbook. So go ahead and read the instructions over here and listen to the whole thing as it is played, and follow along in the listening guide. Neat little animations for there. And you'll notice that it has these distinct sections: the A, the B, the A section, the C, the A, and the B and the A. Now on the right hand side, after you've listened to the whole thing, play through all these excerpts to kind of tune in your listening skills here, right? So if I play, let me just pick this one here at the bottom right here. Okay. So I think I know which one that is here. I think that's the B section. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to drag that button, boom, here. Yay. And then if I did it correctly, then it should put that button there. And what you have to do is kind of play this matching game and match all the different sections of the rondo to the respective buttons here. And then what happens is you'll get a special reward at the end here. Okay, I've skipped to the ending here. So then you're going to have this link here where you click here for your reward. Go ahead and click here for your reward. And then, yay, there's some text here that's going on here. What I want you to do is copy and paste all the text over here, and then send that in an email, either through Blackboard or just directly through my sfasu.edu account, and then that will be how you fulfill this capstone project. And feel free to check out this recipe when you have a chance.